Hi, Rayani.
Hi, Roger. How are you?
How are you? I'm fine. So good. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm good. I am happy that we had a long weekend. So to start with, I would love if you could share a little bit about you, who you are, what to do for people who don't know you yet.
Of course, of course. Well, my name is Rutger Wilhelm, and I'm a person who clutters, so, of course, obviously. But the main story is basically that I went through, life as a person who stutters, for I think it was for almost 25 years or something, because I'm now in my 40s already, and when I was discovering about my cluttering, of course, then it was 35 or something, so that's, of course, that's very, very old, because, I thought I started from my ninth year on. So, so basically I've been, going through life for about 25 years or so, as a person, with a stutter. So I went to all kinds of therapies, group therapies, individual therapies, and so on. And it was the same story all over again, because every time I went somewhere in the therapy, these other people, they were like, oh, Rutger, you just talk too fast, you don't have a stutter at all, for example, so basically, why are you here, so yeah, and that was so, yeah, so strange to experience. Well, so my speech obviously is very fast, or can be very fast. I can also slow down if I want to. So, for example, when I want to now, I can slow down my speech very easily. I can have some pauses in between, for example. And then my pitch is also lower. For example, so I can now control my own speech. But in the past, I just couldn't do that. It was so fast, and there were so many thoughts in my head, for example, that were tumbling over each other. It's such a full head, and and somehow I just couldn't, yeah, control my own, well, let's say, inner sensations in my body as well. Because it feels like I'm having a motor inside of me. Who wants to go on all the time. So it's basically, well, something like ADHD, I think, because I mean, they also want to move on every time. But there's a difference, because, for example, most people with ADHD, they don't clutter or stutter, and so I have basically two kind of disorders in one. And decluttering, your language planning is not functioning optimally. So that means that when you don't know exactly, for example, how to say some words, or how to express a message, and at the same time, you are going so fast, then something happens in your brain. It's kind of short circuits, basically. And so then all kinds of mistakes start to emerge. I mean, things like repetitions, sentence revisions, and so many more symptoms can occur. And so in that sense, stuttering is so much different from stuttering. Yeah. So all these kind of things I just learned, along the way, of course. So after my diagnosis of stuttering. So perhaps, I mean, this is a very, very, very long story. I know, so, in which I, try to combine all kinds of answers to your questions, I think. But yeah. So
That's interesting because it must be very challenging to go through life as a child, as a teenager, an adult, a young adult, without really knowing what you have, like believing you have a stutter, but not feeling that you really fit into that.
yeah, exactly.
Completely, and then
Yeah,
realizing later that you actually clutter.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, I think like many people don't know what is the difference exactly. What are the key differences between the two? Because it's so difficult for so many people to actually identify cluttering. How would you describe the key differences between these two?
Well, the differences, between these two disorders are actually on many levels. So it's on a talking level, on a thinking level, on an energy level, and so on. But let me just start with the talking level, for example. So it's actually many experts agree worldwide that the stuttering is well, basically a problem with a speech coordination. So people who stutter, have difficulty in, for example, saying what they want. So actually, saying sounds of words and so on. So they get stuck in their words and sounds, most of the time, because their speech muscle coordination or their so the coordination from their brain to their mouth isn't working properly in that sense. The same is true, by the way, for people who clutter. So something is going wrong in this coordination between the brain and the mouth, basically. But in the cluttering, there is a language planning problem. So people clutter. So pure clutterers, basically, because there are several groups. There are stutterers, there are clutterers, and there's a combination of the two, which makes it even more difficult, more complex. But pure clutterers, they most of the time don't get stuck in the words, but they can have difficulty with finding the right words, for example. Language planning, finding building their own sentences in the right way, or building the structure of a story, for example, in the right way. People who stutter don't have that at all most of the time. So and that's a true a key difference. Yeah, why? Because it's it just so for example, in therapy, people who stutter, they can be helped, for example, by by doing breathing exercises, to lower their tension in their speech for saying words, because people who stutter mostly have some anxiety, for example, for words. People who clutter don't have that either, for example. So the cause is so different. So the therapy principles are also different. So therapy is based on different different variables or causes, and because there is a basic neurological different cause.
It's super interesting to learn about cluttering. So thank you so much for sharing the differences, the key points.
Yeah.
In a practical way, how did cluttering impact your life in terms of work, friendships, relationships in general?
Good question. I think well, first of all, well, for work, for example, it was terrible for me, to be honest. So during my first years in my career, career. It was so hard for me to understand, why people didn't follow me, for example. That was also true, of course, in the past. So when I was younger, for example, people were always like, why can't you slow down, for example, or I can't follow you, and but then, that didn't have any impact on my my life, basically. But at work, of course, when people can follow you, then you have a real problem, of course. So so it was only then that I noticed that I had a true problem. So so I've been struggling with that a lot. And so for example, I've been fired in my job several times in a row. Just because of the cluttering. And that was so annoying, of course, and so frustrating. And therefore I went on a search, of course, for the solution, and then I found out about the cluttering. But that was I think that was about well, maybe 5 years or something that I was searching, during this time frame, and I didn't know where to look for it as well. So that was a really insecure period, and I was actually lucky that I was diagnosed by someone who was an expert, of course, in cluttering, and she really helped me in that, and so from that moment on, I started to learn more about cluttering. Of course, I started to understand my own speech much better. I just started to read more about it, started to go to conferences, for example, and then things started rolling for me. So it was, so when I wrote my book, for example, that all was in the same period, and so in which I learned so much about it. And that was kind of a self-healing process as well for me, so, and that really worked for me very well. And yeah, and now, of course, I know what to do about it. So, for example, at work, I know how to focus now on my speech. I know how to slow down, for example. So now, things are going great. I mean, this is the first time that I have a job. I have a fixed job, for several years in a row. Because in the past, there was always like 1 year, that I was fired again, or 2 years or 3 years at the max, and then I was fired again. So yeah, there was a huge difference now, of course, to notice that work is going really well. I even got this, two promotions. I mean, already in 4 years' time. So that's really cool. And of course, I still clutter sometimes at work as well. And I even stutter also sometimes. So, but that's really, yeah, really little now. And with friends, they of course know how I am. They just know how I talk, and they're kind of used to my way of speaking, of course. Therefore, so there's no issue for them, of course. And the same is true for my wife, and even for my kid. I mean, he's now 1 year old, and well, I think he's now starting to learn more about my speech as well. Trying to get it better, or know it better. I mean, so that's also very cool.
Very interesting. And you mentioned that, for instance, at work, you learn how to manage like the flow of your like speech, how fast. What is that kind of a technique that you use? Something that you do consciously? What is it that you do that you can slow down?
Very good question as well. First of all, the key for me, at least, but of course also for other people, clutter, is to focus. So you need to have concentration on the way you are speaking. So that takes much energy. But well, and then so for example, I can take much more pauses in my speech. So basically, what I'm doing at my work is having a pause after, let's say, each 5 or 6 or 7 words. So for only 1 second, or maybe sometimes 2 seconds. That's it, basically. So I mean, as you can hear, I mean, yeah, hear me speaking before. I never use a pause, almost never. You use a pause, but now, for example, I'm having a pause. Okay, and that really helps me, in getting more time, because time is the key construct for clutterers. When you have more time in your speech, then all things are getting better. So, for example, you are language planning, so you can think, better or longer about what you're going to say. You can think about what words you want to use. For example, you can think about the listener, for example, how he or she responds to you as a speaker. So there are so many aspects, of course, in communication, and all these aspects require time or focus, basically. And and so yeah, so by taking more pauses, that really helps me. And there's also one other thing. I can, for example, when I want it, I can, for example, finger tap. So I can tap along with my fingers to get a better rhythm in my speech. And when I'm having a better rhythm in a speech and more time, then then it feels like I'm in some kind of lazy chair, So I'm really relaxed then. So and then it's really difficult for me to get out of this chair, or in other words, to go fast again. So when I'm having this focus, then I'm in that chair. I'm in some kind of trail, that just that keeps me moving on. And so, and then I don't have the risk anymore of or of going too fast.
Super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was curious while I heard you talking about it. So thank you so much for sharing and teaching us your secrets, for how you.
Yeah.
You wrote the book Too Fast for Words, and like to share more about about cluttering and also your journey with cluttering. What is the main goal and the main message that you want to send, like that you would like, let's say, the readers to get from this book?
Well, the first thing that I would of course like the readers to know is that well, there is something else. So it's not all about stuttering. It's also about stuttering, for example, and cluttering. So there is a brother of stuttering or a sister of stuttering, so to speak. And of course, what I want to achieve is that there are many stutterers out there still, who still think that they have a stutter, but who might have cluttering, for example, or who might have a combination of stuttering and cluttering. So and who just can make steps forward, you know what I mean? So who just can achieve or succeed, I must say, in sort of controlling their own speech, because of them not knowing what is the matter with them, basically. And that is of course a real shame. I mean, like me, of course, I was in dubio or something, for about 25 years. I just didn't know that there was something else, and that's so important. So so therefore, of course, I wrote the book. But it's also meant for speech language therapists, SLPs, SLTs, to understand what, first of all, what cluttering is, but also why it's so important to distinguish these two disorders, and and to measure it as well, because there are so many. I mean, there are so many ways basically to measure your speech, also in therapy, of course. So it's really important for them to understand that. And so to share the story, and nowadays I'm so glad that, for example, last year, for example, in Canada, in Montreal, that there was a joint World Congress for Stuttering and Cluttering. So there is a place for cluttering next to stuttering as well. And that is a good sign. That is so important that these two disorders, and of course, multiple organizations in the field can work together, to explore the boundaries of these two disorders, basically, and to work together, to get this message out. So that's why I wrote the book.
And I would say the book is really nice. I have been reading and I am enjoying so much, and I cannot wait to finish the whole book. It's super interesting to learn from your perspective. So thank you so much for taking the time to write the book. I guess it was not something that you did from one day to the other. Probably took a long time. I don't know how long it took and the amount of work to write a book. So kudos to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And you are now in your 40s, you mentioned earlier. So you have come a long way with cluttering and all of this and all the challenges that you had to go through in your life because of that. If you would meet the 10-year-old Rutger, what would you tell to the 10-year-old Rutger today, knowing everything that would have happened to you?
I like this question so much, Marianne. It's such a great question. Well, there are so many things, of course, you know, to explain. I mean, to my 10-year-old, me. But I think, you know, I think there are two things. Well, first of all, at least, I think I couldn't have known it before, to be honest. So when I would have, you know, gone on a search much earlier, when I was much younger, so obviously, you know, then I would have found the answer, because, you know, it was just too unknown at this time, you know. So that first of all. And I think secondly, I think also, I think when I would have known it, for example, when I was much younger, I think I wouldn't have the capabilities to slow down, or to manage, you know, my own speech, you know, the way I can do now, for example, because I was, you know, such a, you know, a vibrant. I mean, you know, yeah, you know, like busy all the time. You know what I mean? I was so busy as a child, for example, you know, and I wouldn't have the calmness in myself already to do that. You know, of course, now I'm much older, you know, so, you know, yeah, you know, so now I can, you know, pinpoint or find, you know, my own inner peace in me. So yeah, you know, so I think that, you know, these are two reasons, or two well, lessons for myself, that, yeah, that I would have told to my younger me.
That's cool. Yeah. It's difficult, right? Because we don't, like, as a child, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So it's difficult sometimes to think about it. What would I tell the 10-year-old me?
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Usually what happens is that everything goes fine. Most of the times we panic a lot, but then at the end things tend to go, I think, well, fine.
Yeah, sure. I think so too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, yeah, you know, I mean, and I think also, you know, there's a reason for everything. You know, so when you're younger, you know, yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, maybe there's a reason for me in my life, you know, that I found out about my cluttering long and long after I was, you know, 30 years old, for example. So, yeah, and so, yeah, you know, so that's also a lesson perhaps for myself.
Exactly. Sometimes we have to, rather than asking, why do I have this? Why do I go through this? Is for what? What is the purpose behind it? So sometimes we
Exactly.
have to shift the question and maybe ask in a different way, what can I use this for?
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah.
And what advice would you give to people who also clutter?
Well, first of all, I would say, you know, believe that, you know, something can be done about it, of course, you know, because, you know, something can be done about it if you have this focus, you know, this true inner motivation. Then you can change perhaps, you know, your way of speaking. But um, um, but also, yeah, I mean, yeah, also, of course, you know, if you want to do something about it, then you should, you know, invest time in it. You know, you know, this is not something that you can easily do, of course. For example, you know, I mean, in talking is your, you know, it's a pattern, of course, in your life that you've done so many times over and over again. You know, so it's very difficult to, it can be very difficult to, you know, to change that, of course. So I would say, you know, if you want to, you know, to do something about it, you know, take some years at least to do that, and don't go too fast. You know, don't want to go too fast. Don't want to get, you know, results too easily or something. So yeah, so really work on that, and then I think, you know, you can achieve some good things. But but also, you know, it's a thing that is something that you were born with. You know, basically, you know, it's because it's a neurological disorder. You know, so I think at least, you know, you can always you know, get it better or something, or you can always, you know, come over your cluttering. So it's something that you have to also to incorporate in your life. You know, come to terms with. And yeah, so these, you know, but that's a very fine balance, you know. So on the one hand, you know, you can change some things, and on the other hand, you need to accept that, you know, things won't always be the way you want it. So yeah, I mean, you know, but I guess that's the same story for stuttering, of course, isn't it?
Indeed, things are not always the way that we want, but I think that's also life, the way life is. Like we can't always control everything. And I think as humans, we have the tendency to want to control.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Everything that we can, to feel that we are on top of everything, that we can control the outcome of our life and of situations. But so I think like also finding ways to do things that you know you are good at, to do things that make you feel good about yourself, and to be persistent, to surround yourself with people that support you, that love you for who you are. Like there are so many things I think that we can do. And Roger, thank you so much. It was super nice to talk to you, to get to know you, to understand more about cluttering, which is a topic we rarely hear about. So it's super interesting. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey, to share with us about cluttering. What is it? How does it work? The differences between cluttering, you know, like stuttering. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, of course, for having me. You know, it's been a great honor, honestly. So yeah, you know, so and I hope, of course, to see you and, you know, and more people, perhaps from your surroundings, somewhere in a later stage. So have a good evening in Brussels, and yeah, see you later.
Good evening.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.